Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. My name is Ben and with me is Joe Chill.
Why Joe Chill? That's not even from this movie. That's from the previous movie.
Yeah, but it's so iconic to Batman. I felt like a Joe Chill fit.
This is a movie that has the Joker in it, and you're like, Joe Chill is iconic to Batman, because this week we watched The Dark Knight from 2008, which was a surprise Ben pick. I say that because he doesn't pick these sorts of films, so I was baffled, delighted, but baffled when this was your pick.
Oh, well, it's an amazing movie, but let me get into the synopsis and some facts, and we can get straight into why I think it's an amazing movie. Gotham City faces a new kind of threat as the criminal underworld is thrown to chaos by the rise of a sadistic and unpredictable figure known only as the Joker. As Batman continues his crusade against crime, he joins forces with Lieutenant Jim Gordon and a newly appointed District Attorney Harvey Dent, whose uncompromising approach to justice gives Gotham hope for real change. But when the Joker launches a campaign of terror to undermine the public trust and challenge Batman's morals, the city is plunged into a psychological and moral crisis. The Joker's manipulation forces Harvey Dent down a dark path, turning the city's White Knight into a vengeful vigilante, Two-Face. Batman must then make the hard choice that Gotham can have the hero it needs, not the hero it deserves.
Did you write that one yourself?
I wrote a good portion of it by myself.
I sort of maybe wrote some of it.
That last line, definitely mine.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Hit us with some facts about this cinematic masterpiece.
Released in 2008, directed by Christopher Nolan of Memento, The Prestige, and Interstellar fame. Written by Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan, with story help by David S. Goyer. Starring Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Heath Ledger, Gary Oldman, Aaron Eckhart, Maggie Gyllenhaal, and Morgan Freeman. Music by Hans Zimmer and James Newton Howard. Runtime of 152 minutes. Budget of $185 million. Box office: US domestic $553 million, international $470 million, with a total worldwide of $1,003,845,358. Never again shall I be caught wanting on box office returns.
Yeah, I feel like I've really done something here to trigger, shall we say, something in you with these box office numbers. But the point there is $1 billion at the global box office, which that's some slow clap money, even for 2008. You know,
this movie rules, just in so many ways. Heath Ledger's Joker is both a triumph and heartbreaking. The Nolan Batman cinematic universe is great from start to finish, but I think this is the crown jewel, in my opinion, of the three films.
I think it's widely understood that this is the crown jewel of Nolan's Batman movies. Like, in a way, I've been thinking about this all week. You'd picked The Dark Knight, and when you first picked it, I was like, oh, that's awesome. I absolutely love The Dark Knight, and I have watched it to death. I've analyzed it to death over the years. And then in the back half of the week, I started to get really panicked. Because I was like, what are we going to say? What are we going to say? This movie is like legit one of the biggest blockbuster masterpieces ever. And it's been talked about to death by 1 million people online and in real life. And I just was like, I started to panic because I'm just like, what could we possibly add to the conversation that has not already been said? And I thought of some things.
Well, I had a similar thought, and I thought the best thing I can do is possibly ask some questions, because I'm pretty sure you'll have the answers, and I don't have them. So look, I'm definitely sure we can get through this. This movie has so much to talk about, whether it is just us praising decisions that were made or moments in the film, or whether it is me asking questions or you who have some things to talk about. The internal logic of this film, I realized on this watching, is fantastic. Like, the Joker's methodology and the Joker's kind of push and drive and choices, not flawless, but just they work so well without having to make logical leaps in my own head to make it fit. Like if you think about this character in all of fiction and all the times it's been represented, of the Joker, that is, and you think about kind of the shenanigans they let him get away with because he's the Joker, and you just make stuff fit because he's crazy and all that sort of stuff. In this movie, he is played in such a way that he definitely thinks he's the sane one, right? He's looking at Gotham going, this is mental. Like, this is crazy what you're allowing to happen. And he sees himself as the antidote, and it just fits so well. And like Aaron Eck, why do I have so much trouble with that man's name?
You
Aaron
do, don't you?
Harvey Dent is really, really good too. I find the CG is obviously deliberately pushed to the far end with his Two-Face transformation. I don't actually think that was 100% necessary, especially now that we've gone years past it, and like some of the eye animations, for example, don't necessarily hold up. But it could have been done in a way that it could have been held up.
It's interesting. I mean, that's maybe my first fact for you then. So the Two-Face CG on the face there, and also there are prosthetics at play as well.
Yes.
They actually began with a subtler version of it, and they found that was too disturbing. Like actually for a PG-13 film, it was interesting, like the more sort of subtle and more kind of burn victim that they went with it, the more actually unsettling it was to look at without the, bandages on and that sort of thing. So they were worried about disturbing audiences. So then funnily that kind of pushed them into a more unrealistic kind of place. And you can kind of see that. And I think it works quite well in the end. But yes, it's a very extreme look, almost too extreme for Nolan when we look at his sensibilities in that sense.
But I do really get that that's probably correct, right? Something that's more subtle and lends itself to real life in that situation might be a bit too, right?
Yeah. Particularly for a film of this rating and for this sort of audience, who's supposed to be coming along to see it, which is everybody.
And the third kind of triumvirate of major characters in this film, so you got Dent, Joker, is obviously Bale's Batman. There's been obviously changes from the first film to this film. He's a more experienced Batman. He's a more world-weary Batman. And that kind of shows in that there's parts of this movie where he's like, maybe the best thing for me to do is give up being Batman. And that's the answer, and it takes other people to talk him out of it or events to talk him out of it. But I think it's very well played by Bale, who can play very, very big, very, very well, but his Bruce Wayne and his Batman isn't that huge of a character piece. It's much more grounded and just works very well against these other two characters.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, the Joker has become this role, and I feel like this film really cemented this idea, is that the Joker is almost like a Hamlet or a Macbeth, where every actor in their generation wants to have a go kind of thing at doing their version of the Joker, because it is this role that has been given to plum actors, with Jack Nicholson and then Heath Ledger. And it's sort of become a very sought after thing to want and to have a go at. But I think the real genius, look, there's a lot of things. When you talk about genius, there's a lot of things you could talk about with the Joker and the portrayal and Heath Ledger and all that stuff, which everyone's talked about. But one thing that I find quite interesting is that the Joker as portrayed in this movie is actually an amalgam of the Riddler from the comic books as well as the Joker from the comic books. It's both characters. In Nolan's Batman, it would be pretty much impossible to do the Riddler unless you really reimagined it after watching the Joker in this movie. And I think that was a really smart thing to do, because it definitely made the Joker into basically a super. He has superpowers functionally, which is his brain and his ability to hold those two things together at the same time. The idea that he is a master manipulator and a master planner, and he's Machiavellian in his sense of depth of the schemes that he has. but then he is also simultaneously, as he says, an agent of chaos in the film. And both are true all the time. He is a genius and he is a psychopath and he is improvisational and he is highly planned. It's all of it together. Whereas when you look at previous portrayals of the Joker, particularly on screen, they did definitely lean into the crazy, but not so much into that genius aspect. So this film does a really good job of blending what is functionally two characters from the comics into one super character that does an incredibly great job at just bringing this whole city into chaos, you know?
Yeah, and I think the obvious obsession with Batman pulled from the comics and the TV shows, like him seeing himself as the duality of the other side of Batman, right? Batman is about trying to bring order. Batman is about trying to eliminate the chaos, and the Joker is all about the chaos. Like in the comics and even in this movie, the Joker doesn't care who Batman is when he's not Batman. He just uses that as a tool to create more chaos. He just wants Batman. He just wants them to do this forever. And it's kind of really cool. I have my first kind of question I want to ask. Do you know if, I mean, I've read internet rumors and things, and I have an idea, but do you know if there were any plans, at least minor ways, that they were going to continue the Joker story in the next Batman film? Because I know he was never going to be the main villain. I know he was never going to be like involved in the story as a whole, but
Yeah, it was definitely talked about that they were going to keep him around, but it was not actually set in stone what was going to happen, which is actually also very Christopher Nolan. He does not like to plan that far in advance, even with his franchise stuff like Batman. So it's likely that they didn't know exactly what they were going to do, but obviously watching Heath Ledger work, they knew they had something really special and they weren't ready to give it up. So no, it's not clear, but I don't think that anyone's, no one's lying, no one's, withholding anything. It's that they didn't know. It's they knew this was special. They were going to do something with it, but it wasn't really clear what that was going to be because they hadn't yet had the time to work it out. They were still very much working on this movie at the time of his death, unfortunately. So there's a couple of things in this movie that I find really interesting, which is when you look at the idea of the Joker's plan, sometimes it gets criticized for being too clever, like insanely clever, to the point where you say, well, that's impossible. That's a level of planning and detail that is impossible, because a lot of what the Joker is actually doing is partially reliant on Batman solving incredibly tricky clues that most normal people wouldn't solve. And then, of course, some people argue, well, but Batman's just that clever. And then in that case, the Joker's just that clever. But there's also an alternate reading, which is that the Joker may have left many clues, and these are just the ones that Batman happened to pick up on in order to get to the next point in the story. He may not have solved things in the way that the Joker necessarily planned for, but he wanted him to solve it in some kind of a way. So, and I like that. I think that's an interesting read. There's something similar that happens in another film we've looked at, which is Mission Impossible Fallout, where the bad guy has a plan. It is obviously incredibly complicated, but because we're not actually looking at the film from his perspective, it's not entirely clear to us exactly which parts were super thought out and which parts weren't. So it's I think it creates an interesting dynamic, and I don't mind it. Some people call it a criticism. I don't really think it is.
I actually was thinking about that watching it this time too. I looked at it more like the Joker didn't really care what the outcome was, just that there was an outcome at the end of each step. Like he kind of had plans for if they did this or did that, but like there are times where you look at it and you go, well, I don't think he really cared if this person died or this person died, or I don't think he really cared if that ship blew that ship up or that ship blew that ship up. I don't think he really cared if Batman solved this. All it was about the continuing game. Like, I almost imagine that you're right. There was about 7 things in the background that Batman never got to or never solved, so he just didn't bother with them. He just got to
Mm.
the ones that Batman found and dug into. Like, it seems to fit his modus operandi quite well. Like, him kind of beating the mobsters at their own game and things like that is much easier to believe because you can plan that out, and he had the money and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the Batman stuff, it's just like, well, how did he know he was going to do that? I don't think he did. I don't think he cared. What I think he was doing was, okay, I'm just going to be ready for what comes my way and continue this on. And
Yeah.
that's what he was brilliant at.
And it's also, this is a movie as well that owns its theme from basically the very first frame. In fact, you could argue the final frames of the previous film actually introduced this movie. You know, at the end of Batman Begins, Gordon literally introduces the theme of the Dark Knight, because in that final sequence where they tease the Joker card at the end of Batman Begins, Gordon's saying, well, what about escalation? What happens? We do this, they do that, you know. We carry what is it? We buy semi-automatics, they buy automatics, that kind of thing. And that is what the Dark Knight is about. The Dark Knight is all about the consequences of introducing a variable like Batman to a city. And the entire movie, from the start of the film to the end, is just a never-ending escalation. It only moves in one direction, which is a really fascinating thing to watch. And there are a lot of different parts of the narrative that support that driving theme that we only escalate, you know, we only go up, if you like. So one of them is the musical cue, which is actually quite a difficult cue to listen to, when which is the Joker's cue. And it is basically one note that is a slide, and it starts very low, and then it just goes up and up and up and up and up, and it's like a hum kind of that just escalates all the way up. Again, like literally an escalating theme for the Joker as we go through there. So something else that happens in the film to highlight that particular theme is the idea of permanence, which is to say that in most like franchise movies, the hero's kind of got his stuff and he's got his home base and whatnot. And in this movie, it's actually, well, no, the consequences of the previous film is that Wayne Manor has burned down. Therefore, we don't have it in this film. He lives in the penthouse for the entirety of this movie, which is also really clever because this movie is all about Gotham City, which is basically a character. So putting Bruce Wayne in the city permanently is just really, really smart, not somewhere out in the sticks of Wayne Manor kicking around. Halfway through the film, when his Batmobile, his Tumbler, gets destroyed and he's left with only the Batpod, we don't return to the Tumbler or the Batmobile later. There's a permanence to it. We actually then are just stuck with the Batpod. So it's the idea that the consequences have actions, and then it leads to the next step, and then they commit to that. So even the idea that with Rachel Dawes, when she dies, she's dead. You know, it's not a superhero death, it's she's dead. And that is real stakes. So the hero just sort of, you know, loses throughout the movie in ever escalating ways. And it is relentless in that sense. And it just really commits to its theme in a way that most movies don't. You could argue it's heavy-handed, except that it's executed so well that you go, well, that's really unfair. You can't say it's heavy-handed if it's just on point, you know?
So you mentioned that the character I was going to bring up next, which was Rachel. Rachel's an odd one for this film for a couple of reasons. The first is different actress. First film was Katie Holmes. Second film is Maggie Gyllenhaal. I'm not familiar with 100% the reasons. I'm guessing it was probably like Katie Holmes just didn't want to come back or something like that. Or they didn't feel like it was a good fit. Or what?
We'll never know. It was one of the classic Hollywood lines given at the time, which is scheduling, which could mean literally anything. And I think the thing that's really telling to me, though, is that they, for whatever reason, whether it was on Katie Holmes' side, didn't want to return, whether it was the production side, for whatever reason, they did decide to actually tweak the personality of that character from movie to movie with this recast in a way that, much as it suits the film and it doesn't hurt the film, Now we've got a point of comparison. So the question that I have for you is, which portrayal do you like better? Because they're not the same. They're
No,
very, very different in
the,
terms of the way they're written, in terms of the way they're performed. So it's not like where Maggie Gyllenhaal is doing an impression of Katie Holmes. She's doing something entirely different.
it's almost a different character, except that there is
Yeah.
a history to the character, and there's a different actress, right?
They
Like
have the same
it,
name, but
yeah,
but
yeah.
the history, yeah.
It's very different. It's a weird thing. I've watched this one most recently, and it's been a long time since I've seen Batman Begins, so I don't actually remember Katie Holmes' portrayal too much. But I think in this movie, Maggie Gyllenhaal's portrayal was exactly what it needed to be.
Mm,
It fit the tone of this movie a bit better. Bruce couldn't have a safe refuge in that character this time. And because of the events of the first movie, he didn't, and they continued to play that. They also made her pretty strong. Like
mm.
they made her character's will quite important, and she even executes that will before her tragic passing in the letter that she writes Bruce and saying like, "Hey Bruce, like I can't be a part of this. I'm gonna be with Harvey. Like this is what I need, right?" So I think the character is quite good. What I don't quite really didn't gel with me this time, but I'm not sure if it didn't gel with me other times, is the relationship of Rachel and Harvey.
Mm.
There's a there's just a missing chemistry link there for me between Maggie and Aaron. Maybe it doesn't feel like there's this super close bond between them, even though that's what's being played on screen. It feels a bit more like wartime buddies than it does romantic interest. Like it's like they've almost got like a Stockholm syndrome for each other or something, just because they've been through hard stuff.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of time for it to
No,
develop, really, which, again, I think that two competent and above competent, really, like performers. So I think it all works in that sense.
yes,
But yeah, it's just that there's not a lot of time for it to develop, and you sort of just have to buy that it developed off screen at some point, and we're going to live with that. So um, I guess I also do want to talk a little bit about the act structure. I don't want to bore you to tears, but I want to talk about the act structure because I find that fascinating. So, and again, getting pretty deep in the weeds here, but this is a film which has kind of an unusual act structure because usually we have act one where we introduce everything and then we have an inciting incident or something that goes terribly wrong, which pivots us into act two, and then there's an escalation throughout act two. Hero arrives at their lowest point, which usually signals the end of act two. They're galvanized into action, and then we head into act three. Cool. In this film, they mess with almost all of that. So it's like, because this film is doing something that a lot of sequels struggle with, which is it is attempting to be the middle chapter of a larger three film narrative while also providing a satisfying three act structure in its own movie. So, for instance, the inciting incident is the opening sequence of the movie. We're not waiting till the end of Act One. We get it straight up. It's the Joker, right? He's the problem. He's the thing that we are then attempting to solve for the rest of the runtime of the film. So, and if you look at the Act Two to Act Three turning point, that is also just as complicated because, well, really, Bruce's darkest moment is the death of Rachel, which is why it was a good point for me to talk about the act structure. Except that's not actually the end of the second act because we have the death of Rachel, and then we still do all of the larger sort of Gotham City escalation with the hospitals and with the, that kind of thing. And he's in the Lamborghini and he's going through. So again, we've got this huge sort of other end to the second act, and the film's not afraid of any of that because it seems to just know, don't worry, this still works, and it's not that it's breaking any rules because it's not. You could also argue those events a little bit differently in terms of where each turning point happens, but it is interesting that it's not particularly clean, and it also is smart enough to realize it doesn't have to be, and this works for this film. So it's something I always look at and I just go, yeah, anytime anyone gets locked into, okay, act one's got to be exactly like this, act two's got to be exactly like this. It's like, no, it doesn't. It has to be whatever the film needs it to be. So,
well, I mean, it kind of locks into the broad theme that this film has is chaos, right? Like it's not here to tell its traditional story. Like the Joker isn't here to be a traditional villain. And you know, even in the third film, we get the villains are all about trying to impose order instead of chaos. Like we get that kind of juxtaposition in that. But like you brought up the hospital, but I also want to bring up the start of this film, which you brought up as well. The opening to this film is special. The Joker heist at the start as an introduction to a character and a concept and a theme and a villain and a world, it is nigh on flawless, as well as being super entertaining. Like you can be all those things, but if you miss out on being entertaining, why do people care? The stunt work is a precursor, is a flash in the pan, is a taste and a amuse bouche to what we're getting later in the film, and the kind of intricate detail of the plan, as well as the chaos and the portrayal of it, signifies the rest of the film as well. Like I would almost love to see a movie just on this heist. Like the whole heist could have been a movie.
have you seen Heat?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if you had.
No,
So
I have seen Heat. Yeah.
we should watch Heat at some point. Reason I bring that up, obviously, if you've seen Heat, then you would know, but our listeners may not. So there are two sequences in this film, and the one that you just referenced is one of them, that are really reminiscent of the movie Heat with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. So the first is that bank heist sequence, and even William Fichtner is in Heat, and he is also the bank manager here of the mob bank. And then the second is the car chase or truck chase, you know, at the midpoint of the film. That's also got a lot of
dude.
I know, yeah. So that's also got a lot of visual language shared with the movie Heat. So sorry, I just thought I'd mention that because you were like, I'd like to see a whole movie of the heist, and I was like, well, kind of.
You've kind of slightly derailed me. Was it what's his name? Fichtner? Did you say?
Yeah.
How good is he at those kind of meaty bit parts?
I know, yeah.
Like, I can't think of. Oh, he's so good. But yeah, so that heist is amazing. And then that was kind of you've led me into what I was going to talk about. The stunts in this film and the way they shot them are next level insane. Like the truck is the classic example, right?
The truck flip, yeah.
They flipped the truck. Like they did it in a stunt way, but they flipped a truck. And they add explosions and bits and pieces to make it look good, but they flipped a truck. Like, next show should be just hashtag flip a truck.
Yeah. Well, it's end over end, too. It's not like it's not like
a 12,
going on its side or anything. Yeah. Look, and this is really Nolan, you know, became known for his insane practical stunts. And you could say that really started here because, yes, he'd made Batman Begins, which was a big movie, but this is definitely a whole new level of stunt work and that sort of thing. And he just would take it even further and even further in his future films. So one thing, though, that I think is also interesting to me is that I feel like this is almost the last time of his three that Christopher Nolan made a real Batman movie. Because by the time you get to The Dark Knight Rises, there are a lot of things in The Dark Knight Rises where you go, this is still a Batman movie, right? Like it's doing all of the heavy lifting in terms of character work and in terms of, you know, getting a satisfaction for plot arcs and that sort of thing. But there's not a huge amount of Batman stuff in that third film. And in a way, even though, as we've said, this film, The Dark Knight, is functionally perfect, it is even less Batman-ish than its predecessor of Batman Begins. You know, we start to see Batman in this movie appear in the Batsuit in broad daylight in some sequences. And it just, something in me sort of goes, I don't love seeing Batman in some of those lighting environments, to be perfectly frank with you. Like, it's a very unique kind of suit and character, and I think I should be clear, I think this film, they get away with it, and it's the film's a masterpiece, and we're with it, and it's not a problem. But I do think the leap from then here to the next film is a little too much for me, where I struggle to see Batman in some of those environments and some of those sort of locations, because it's a big concept, right? And whereas then if you look back to Batman Begins, they are being super careful about the film noir kind of lighting, and he only appears in shadows, and he's crouching, and it's moody, and it's gothic all the time, very, very careful and posed and that sort of thing. So it's a bit of a reverse progression in that sense, if you look across the whole trilogy, where you have that true, absolutely, yes, this is Batman from Batman Begins, and then by the time you get to Dark Knight Rises, it's a guy fighting in a bat suit in the daytime.
I think that probably coupled with another Batman that we've watched, and that is Ben Affleck's DCU Batman, is the reason a lot of people were very keen for the Matt Reeves The Batman, right? It looked like it was a return to that kind of that view of Batman, not Batman as part of a greater whole, but Batman as the singular, isolated character. And that's kind of what we're getting in these three movies, right? We get Batman, the single isolated character, but Nolan's done that. He's probably not too interested in repeating that, so he then expands Batman's world. And the Joker almost becomes the main character of this film in its drive. And then Gotham becomes a bigger part of it. And then you've got the third film, which Gotham is a major part of it. And we actually leave Gotham for large swathes of that movie as well. So you're right, because as a storyteller, Nolan is not one to sit on his haunches. He wants to always evolve and push forward. I think that's the side effect we get with these movies. It is that you can't keep doing insular Batman movies if he wants to do that. And look, I think each movie gives us something fantastic. But yeah, the first one's probably the most Batman, you're correct, but this one is, I think, the best movie.
Yeah, it is, and I think, and that's often how I think of it. I think the first one's, it's I like that phrasing, the most Batman, of the trilogy. But this one's definitely the best movie of the trilogy. So, and I think as well, there's so many iconic action moments. The Hong Kong sequence is outstanding, and it remains one of my favorite cinematic sequences. Forget Batman sequences, just cinematic sequences. The high sort of skydive off the building, or base jump if you like, and then he's crashing through the building, he's fighting the guys, he grabs Lau, and then they have the skyhook extraction. I'm just like, whoa, this is insane. This is so good.
The idea that the Chinese government did not kick up more of a stink is probably the most fictional thing in this movie.
Hey, Batman has no jurisdiction, bro. Like, that's what they say,
And you know what? That's all I'd need to hear. I wouldn't be chasing Lau after that. Oh, what? Batman? No jurisdiction. We can't do anything about that.
The other thing as well is the sequence in what I'm going to say is the skyrise under construction at the end, I also think is outstanding. And the music in that sequence is off the charts. The music throughout this whole film is just incredible. This movie is the perfect pairing of the score and the action that is taking place on screen in a way that we just don't often get. You just don't often get it, because this is literally perfect. You feel so inspired and you feel so into it when Batman is doing these action beats and taking these guys out, because of what is happening on screen and the pairing of what is happening with the music, going into your ears basically. And it just equals this massive experience that is something really special.
That finale starting in that under construction skyscraper, and because this movie doesn't have a twist at the end. This movie has multiple twists throughout it, right? Multiple things, all orchestrated by the Joker. And the twist in this is that he has dressed up the hostages as the hostage takers, and
Yeah.
the hostage takers are dressed as the hostages. And it creates this moment where Batman has to fight the police and the bad guys because he doesn't want the civilians being hurt. And it's kind of this masterful stroke that I only thought of this time, in that this actually allows him to get away with the lie that he has to tell at the end of this movie, that Gordon has to tell, right? Because he's had open conflict with the police in this battle, it makes the story easier to sell that he was the one who killed Harvey Dent and that he was the one who did these awful things, and Harvey was still a good man. And it allows that story to work because we have this build up at the start where he's just doing the right thing, but obviously to all intents and purposes, it looks like he's doing very much the wrong thing. And I think it's a really masterful piece of storytelling. And I think it just works so well. Another bit of storytelling that I think gets used as a bit of a joke, as memes and things after this film, is the computer system that he builds, the R&D. There was recently a joke in our friendship group because Jim is a crazy person and has like 6 monitors across his wall in his home.
Yeah, you can't see it, but I'm looking at a wall of screens right now. So it's how I like it, you know?
And before that, though, this was treated as a bit of a fanciful, crazy meme part. But it's a really important beat in this film to tell the story of morality and how close and how far Batman was to go and how ready people would believe he was to go that far. And that moment where he tells Lucius, like, I don't have access to this, you have access to this. When you're done, type your name in. And when he does, and it destroys it all, it kind of has this really nice moment with Morgan Freeman's Lucius Fox where he's just like, he kind of breathes again. He's like, oh, he is still the Batman and the Bruce Wayne that I know he is. He hasn't gone over the edge. And I think that moment's really important. Yes, we get it with some sci-fi mumbo jumbo, but it really works and is needed in the film.
Yeah. I mean, and it's really just about what it represents. It doesn't really matter what the device is, but the point is that, you know, he has actually had to cross a line in order to get the Joker, which is something that the Joker knows to an extent and uses as much as he can to say, you're just like me. And really from that point on to the end of the movie, we have nothing but complexity in terms of Batman and where he is in terms of his morals and ethics. And it is kind of amazing that the movie doesn't shy away from that and doesn't actually attempt to dumb down this into Batman's right or Batman's wrong. It's like, nope, we're just going to live in this really uncomfortable place where he makes not one, but multiple decisions that are at the same time completely ethically grounded and also kind of ethically bankrupt. And it's like, that's a magic trick of writing in this movie. You know, the idea that he is going to lie in order to basically save the city and do what he thinks is ultimately for the greater good. And it's the idea that can that lie be a positive thing? And do the ends justify the means? And, you know, that same idea is with that device, with that sonar device that he creates, is like, do the ends justify the means? Have you actually bankrupted yourself in order to get into this situation? And the film does not give you an easy answer. The next film does not give you an easy answer. And what you're left with is what I think is really great writing, in the sense that you're left with not these couple of choices from Bruce Wayne, from Batman, but you're left with a trilogy of choices to then make an on-balance judgment, if you like, of the character as a whole, to deem whether or not he is actually morally and ethically a hero.
Because this movie plays with the idea through about 3/4 of it that the tide's turning. People like him. The people are starting to defend his actions. Like, the cops starting to like him, even though unofficially they're supposed to be catching him. It's more than just Gordon. It's more than things. Like, even people are debating him and saying, well, no, he does the right thing, even though, he's helping the city, the crime's down, all these sort of things. And he has to make this choice at the end, which is this broad choice of, well, no, Batman can't be the hero. The Gotham doesn't need Batman the hero. Gotham needs Harvey Dent the hero, the martyr. I need to be still seen as this vigilante, as this grey area, as this is more of a villain in some circumstances.
Well, it's because that's the only way that they can get the criminals locked up, and the end goal is clean up the city.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like if that's how we're going to do it, if that's what we pinned all our hopes on Harvey Dent, so he can't go down. Even if he actually goes down, he can't go down. So, I just a really fascinating piece of complexity there to the writing, which I love that they don't untangle,
I have one last thing to say, and that's Michael Caine rules. Like, Michael Caine is so good in this movie, and all three of these movies, to be fair. Like, he's just this kind of unwavering moral compass, this unwavering wizard who is just like, he knows that he can't leave. He knows that he is integral, whether Bruce realizes it or not. And he's looking at this person as a son for three movies. Like a father looks at a son, but he knows that he can't be the father because, he had a dad and all that sort of stuff. I just think the subtlety and kind of nuance that Michael Caine plays Alfred with is bonkers crazy, and it probably gets credit, but I think it needs more credit. It needs so much more credit what he does in these three films.
I think as well, it's a really great portrayal in that Alfred in these movies is unwavering in his commitment to the cause. Yes. And he is often the one who is actually saying to Bruce, no, you said this is what you're going to do. Did you mean it, or were you just mucking around? Like, what's it all for? He challenges him in that way. Whereas I think in a lot of the rest of the Batman lore, he's very much like, I don't know, you're in the driver's seat. What are we doing next, bro? Like,
do you want me to sew you up? Do you want me to serve you tea? I'll do whatever you want.
Exactly. So, whereas here he's keeping Bruce accountable, which I think is really important in the movie. And it's also not particularly fair in some time at some points in time to Bruce, but again, it's like, no, this choice that you made that you didn't understand at the time
it has consequences.
It had consequences, and this is what they are. So let's be real here. So I think it's a great portrayal, and definitely a high point of the movie that is nothing but high points, really, when you look at it.
I'm done, man. Batman: The Dark Knight is a modern masterpiece.
Why did you? I still don't really have why you wanted to watch it, because you don't go for these movies.
It's a little complicated, but I like this movie and wanted to watch it. It's as simple as that, man.
Well, that's.
I was looking at movies. I was trying to figure out, what do we watch? Is there a thematic thing? And then like a TikTok reel came up of The Dark Knight, and I'm like, oh man, that's right. This movie's the best.
Okay, I think a TikTok reel might be the most underwhelming reason to choose a masterpiece of a movie, and I am upset with you now. I'm your Alfred. I'm keeping you accountable for Mickey Mouse decision making, right? Even when it leads to good outcomes.
It may have been the impetus, but there are other movies I was going to choose. But as I said, like, it had been so long since I'd seen it. It had been that kind of reminder of, this is an amazing movie. And I just, Heath Ledger's Joker is one of those perfect acting pieces, but it also has a weird legacy. And I'm not gonna dive too deep into that, but there are people on the internet who really love that character and really associate with that character. And I think I'm going to attribute as just kind of an immature way. Okay? And I think every time I think about that, it makes me furious, because that role is so good and does not deserve to be pulled down by the amateur way that people look at it and attach to it. And that's kind of what I was thinking about after that TikTok, because it was a clip of Heath Ledger's Joker. And I'm like, why do people get this so wrong? And I'm just like, I need to watch this again to feel good about this character again. And then that just led me to, I just want to watch this movie. Like, there's something about the character of the Joker in pop culture as a whole, where it does attract that element, right? That glorification rather than what should be fear. The Joker is scary. What the Joker represents should induce so much fear. And it does in me. If that thing was real, I would be so afraid of him. But there is that element of that people who just like really dig it.
I think that's internet culture, though. Unfortunately, in the age of the internet, people who often aren't well actually latch on to,
or are just very young and don't have a developed sense yet.
Sure. So yeah, often latch on to this, which is actually, it's a fictional character that's very well acted, very well written, and is a masterpiece of creativity in its execution. So so it is sad that unfortunately it also has prompted that following inadvertently. But look, why don't you tell the good people of the interwebs where they can find the rest of our wonderful podcast, because I have got something that could not be more different from the Dark Knight for where we're going
My hope
next.
is the Secret Garden. But anyway, that would be such a cool pick if I just called it, by the way. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for watching this podcast. If you'd like to do so, you can find us on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify, Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. When you do find us, if you do want to continue watching us, please feel free to subscribe. We'd really love to have you along for the journey, along for the adventure, if you will. If you have anything you'd like to talk to us about, you can use that comment feature and go, hey, I disagree with your opinions on Batman. I think Batman Begins is the best Batman. And we'd be like, okay, have you seen this movie? It rules. But we could have that conversation, right? Or if there's a movie you'd like us to watch and you're like, Ben and Jim are never going to pick that movie, throw it out there. Maybe we haven't thought about picking that movie and you could jog our memories like that TikTok jogged my memory to watch The Dark Knight. If you want to follow us on any social medias, you can do so on Instagram and TikTok, Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures on TikTok, and Jim_and_Ben. On all of these things, you can do a thing called like or following, and you can do those things. And if you do, maybe you'll just feel a little good inside because you've done some good for us. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Jim, drum roll, please, announce The Secret Garden as the next movie we are watching.
I'm not going to do that, but I am going to offer you a choice, and it's a bizarre
choose The Secret Garden.
It's a bizarre choice, which is why I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm going to say you can choose sports drama or you can choose creature feature. They couldn't be more different from each other. And I would be happy to watch either of these movies this week.
So let me deliberate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Creature feature is an odd series of words to come out of your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
There are some things that fit in the creature feature domain that are very Jim, and there are some that are very not Jim. So I'm curious to see which way that goes. Sports drama is wild. You like one sport, and there's not many dramas about that sport.
And it's not about that sport either.
Yeah, so it's not an ice hockey movie, guys.
No.
I'm going sports drama. I think sports drama is the wilder choice here.
All right.
What are we in for?
Okay, so we're going to watch a film that I think more people need to see. And it's a film... Titans? I have no idea if you've seen this or not, but it's a film that I just think, like I say, it deserves to be seen by more people. I think it's really tight. I think it's a really well-executed piece of cinema. So we are going to watch Kevin Costner tear up the screen in Draft Day from 2014.
I thought we were getting Field of Dreams for a second.
No, I don't know what I'd call that, but I wouldn't call it a sports drama. Although it has both sports and drama and ghosts. I don't know.
I have not seen Draft Day. I do
Awesome.
know about Draft Day, and I do know what it's about. So yes, I am very keen to watch it.
Well, I think you're really going to like it. I'm glad you haven't seen it. I worried you may not have seen it or may have seen it. So I'm glad you haven't. But until then, join us for Draft Day, and we hope you enjoyed The Dark Knight.
Thank you very much.